she's got lobster. And she said to the waiter, she said, I'd like a lobster tail. And he said, okay, once upon a time there were these two lobsters. But I got to tell you, this is such a joy to be here. So many friends. You all look terrific. I mean, really terrific. And again, you've achieved so much. And I remember the last one, it was years ago, and Bill, you remember Frank Maruca was there.
Mr. Bazooka.
Mr. Bazooka.
From Detroit.
From Detroit. Pat Patterson put him on the map. Could you give it up for the amazing Pat Patterson? Pat, I should apologize for all that I've stolen from you down through the years. But I'm not going to give you credit tonight either. No, you're a legend in your own shower. And I just want to thank you. But I got to tell you about Mr. Maruca. Frank Maruca changed my life. I start working for $150 a week at WKIX FM. Raleigh. Gets the most out of his voice of any person I've ever seen. And so Maruca's there. He said, come outside. So we walked outside. I was going to talk to him about whether I was going to stay at the station or not. And this guy is outside. And you're not going to believe this. This is, Maruca was on budget. He sold more ads than anybody, but this guy comes walking up. He wasn't on the radio station. He had tattered clothes. Jeans looked like they were getting ready to fall out. Maybe it was from UNC or NC State or something. He looked really bad. Hair disheveled. And he came up and he's walking along and his clothes are dirty and he's got this one shoe in front. The sole separating from the shoe. And this guy looked like he was on his last day, sole separating from the shoe. And you're not going to believe this, but Frank Maruca reached in his pocket. I remember like it was yesterday. Gary, you might have been there. He reached in his pocket and pulled out a thick wad of $100 bills. $100 bills with a big, thick, green rubber band around the $100 bills. And he pulled off the green rubber band and said, here, fix your shoe. That's Frank Maruca. And we're sorry. Now, John Maxfield, better known as Mike Mitchell, sitting here. He, you see him like all the time at Crabtree Valley Mall and all that. So, look, maybe somebody fall down. Let's sue somebody, John. He became an attorney after working 9 to midnight, and that's amazing. But if it's okay, John, do you mind coming? John Tesh, who has achieved so much. I mean, really, John Tesh, right here. Attention.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you. Thank all the little people. Don't expect you to go up.
I was expecting somebody taller to become before me. I'm as nervous now as I was the first day that Scott White put me on the air, basically. So
you should see how nervous I was.
Oh my gosh! Scott, first of all, thank you for inviting me, and as I arrived, I was lamenting not being at every one of these, and it's. I have a couple of little stories I'd like to tell that are sort of funny, but I also want to tell you how important it is for me to be here for a number of reasons. Because when Scott emailed me when it became clear that I was actually invited, I was telling this story, and I told this. I've told him this story like by text and by email, but I've never told him this story, in person. Is that everything that has happened to me, not only everything that's happened to me professionally, but how I met my wife, why I have my kids, why 35 people, a week get a paycheck and have been for 15 years because of our company, was started by you, Scott. I mean, it's I don't know if you guys all know this story, but the story that I had in my head for so many years was that I auditioned to be a newscaster, a 2020 newscaster, and I got the job because I was diligent and I was persistent and I kept after it and everything. And then I finally found out about 5 years ago, that I got the job because Patterson needed a center for the friggin' basketball team.
That's true.
And it is a true story, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, this is, you've taken my whole childhood away from me now. This is it.
And you know why you needed one? Because the center left and went to Charlotte.
Oh, the center left and went to Charlotte, yeah.
That's been a burden on your life.
But what happened, and by the way, Rick Dees, and I was telling him and Julia this at the table, you know, Rick was sort of like Moses, because I never met Rick back then. I just knew that Rick Dees had been in town, and that he came in with his staff, and it was like, I will be on the air, and then I will move on. And but I replaced Rick. He was your roommate.
Yeah.
Right, and so Rick got out of town, so I ended up being Bill Leslie's roommate.
Yeah, we were.
And what happened during that period of time was that first, Scott just spent so much time teaching me how to be a broadcaster, and that was terrible. I mean, ask Thorne James. It was like, it's 20 minutes after 3. This is John Tesh, WKIX 2020 News. And Scott was all like, don't say 2020, you're freaking people out. But Bill, you know, and you should know this, that one of the reasons Bill is such a great broadcaster is that this guy rehearsed every single day. I mean, you remember doing this where he would take the paper, right, and he would read, and to this day I still do this if I'm going to ad-lib a story. He would read a news story, and then he would put this story down, and then he would ad-lib in the mirror for like 5 minutes. And that's how you taught yourself how to bathe. I did it because I watched watched you do it. Yeah. So I mean, all the jocks and were so kind to me. Thorne James did drive me out of my mind. The pranks. I mean, he seems like such a like a really cool guy now, you know, and sort of together. But he was a madman, and he would just torture me. There was this. Because I was on the weekends only, right? So I'd be there, and I'd be ripping the the news from the AP wire, and I'd get the cards from UPI Audio, and then I would get ready, and you'd hear the news sound like a bam 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 ba da da da. It says John Tesh, WKIX 20, and I would read the news. And so he would open his mic. He says he doesn't remember this, but he would open his mic, right, from the other studio, and as I'm talking, he's going like this. And I'm thinking that Satan has inhabited my body somehow. And am I making that noise? Is it coming out of my ass? What is going on? And finally realized it was him just torturing him. But I do want you to know that that the way I got the job, as I remember it, was I kept doing these demos. I actually got suspended. I was telling Julia this. I got suspended from NC State because I signed I don't even know if you know this, Scott. I signed a drop ad card because I wanted to get out of statistics and I wanted to be a full-time broadcaster because I got bit by the bug. And so my roommate, who's in danger of being killed at any moment by me, says to me, just sign your professor's name on the drop ad card. It's easy. That's how I dropped my courses, and it was statistics, and I needed that one course to be dropped. So I said, I'm not doing that. He goes, no, do it. I'll do it for you. So he signs the name. And after my junior year, you remember this, Bill? It was like the end of my life. After my junior year, all of a sudden my report card comes back, and it has a letter in it that I broke the honor code and I was being suspended from school and I wouldn't finish my senior year. So my parents, who are deep South Baptist, threw me out of the house. So university threw me out at NC State. My parents threw me out, put me in a Volkswagen with a tent. And I true story. And I slept at like Tanglewood or something, whatever it was out there, and pumped gas at College Esso, and worked for CC Mangum. Anybody remember CC Mangum? Okay, so I was the backhoe guy. I was that guy, and I listened to KIX every day on my little transistor radio, and I said, this is the only way I'm going to get out of here. I have to get that job. So I went to WKNC Radio, and WKNC was the campus radio station at NC State, and it may still be. And I talked my way in there and said, hey, can I just use your facilities? And so what I did was I don't know if you remember this, I created a fake broadcast, true story, where I went in there with the reel-to-reel tapes, and I said, "This is John Tesh, WKIX." And I did all. I didn't have any any help, so I did all the voices myself. So I said, "This is WKIX 2020 News, John Tesh with you, and today in the Middle East, Henry Kissinger had this had a report about how well détente is going." Correspondent Maurice Gindi in Cairo has the report.
This is Maurice Gindi in Cairo. Today, Henry Kissinger had this to say about détente.
I think that there's a problem. I think détente couldn't possibly be something that we've worked together with.
This has been Maurice Gindi in Cairo.
Thank you, Maurice. John Tesh, WKIX 2020 News. Next news at 20 minutes to 6, right? And I took that reel-to-reel and gave it to these guys, and then all of a sudden my phone rings in my wherever I was, and there's a whole bunch of people laughing, and it's on a conference call, and they said, I think it was you and a couple other people, it may have been Maruka, and they said, "Listen, if you want the job this badly, you can turn the transmitter on Sundays and play the religious tapes." So that was my first gig. So then what I did, because now I'm a criminal, right? So I figured what could be worse? So what I would do is I played razor blade roulette with the religious tapes, and it's amazing that I actually ended up being able to being let into a church at this point after all this has happened. But I'd close my eyes and I would take the razor blade and I would just hit one of the tapes, right? And I'm up at 6 o'clock in the morning, doing this thing. So it would play and I'd sit there, and I'd wait. And about some days it was like, some Sundays it was like, half hour, sometimes it was 2 hours, and all of a sudden the guy would be talking, and then Moses said to, and then, and I'd open up the mic and go, "Oh, there seems to be a technical difficulty. John Tesh, let's just play some music," And nobody at the station ever knew this because
Nobody listened.
Nobody. Well, yeah, because it was 6 o'clock in the morning. So I'm lucky to be here because I did. But I wanted to thank you guys for just, really just shaping. There's so many of you here, Kenny, and all the stuff that you've done for me, and everybody that's all the jocks was. I describe it to my family as WKRP. It really was that, for me. And the other thing you should know is that this is one of the reasons I really wanted to come is that almost exactly a year ago in May, there were like maybe 2 or 3 of you who know this, is I got a terrible, basically terminal cancer diagnosis. And one thing led to another, and we found a genius at Johns Hopkins who did surgery on me and cured me after the guys at UCLA said, "You need to get your affairs in order." And I got another chance at life. And so, for so many reasons, it's important for me to be here. God bless you guys.
Thank you, John.
I can't compete with these incredibly talented people. I just feel so very fortunate to be a part of this fraternity. It's incredible. I was thinking today, I've been here lately thinking about retiring from my job, and it's bam, it's just like that. It was 72 when I had my first full-time job at WKIX, and I've met so many great people along the way. Barry Haids, my God, I'll never forget when I wrecked my car and I was so depressed, and I come back to the station and you say, "Don't worry about it, I'll fix it." And he repaired my car. And then John Tesh wrote a song about Barry's body shop. They made it Buddy's Body Shop.
Buddy body.
It was great.
Barry's body.
You got it, man. Yeah. It was incredible. And
Inspired by Disco Duck, by the way.
So Disco Duck was part of that. Was a part of it, yeah. But working with Rick Dees and Ken Lowe and all you guys, my gosh, Pat Patterson. Pat Patterson, good Lord! When I was the morning man, when I was the morning news guy for Pat Patterson, it was like, my God, I've reached the gates of heaven, because it was like, and I knew at the time that I wasn't quite ready for that. And then Mr. Mazuka brought Scott White in to kind of, help create a little refinement in the mornings. I've had a wonderful career, and I always think about KIX. There's a special fraternity here, you know. I'm so sad that Doug Limerick couldn't make it tonight. I think about 2020 News, I'm Doug Limerick. And John, I've got the first 2020 newscast that you did on tape. And
Please burn it now.
No. I do remember that Patterson said, you know, Tesh is pretty good, but he sounds a little effeminate. It was like, John Tesh? What?
Yeah, it's there. You can hear it.
But the guy is 6'6", and we do need a center for the radio station basketball team.
I was great until you said I was going to play donkey basketball with you.
But John was an awesome soccer player, and a lot of people don't know that, but he made a pretty good basketball player too. Scott White taught me how to write like nobody else.
Yeah, Scott White.
Scott White, what a writer. And then I got to go to Houston and work with Ken Lowe at KULF, and Patterson, Pat, you came down there for a while, and some of the best friends I have ever had are here tonight, and I am just absolutely thrilled to be a part of this, and I think it just says something about how special a group this is, that we have all of these people here tonight, and just talking with George and his lovely wife, and tonight.
I figure that John owes his life to me because I'm the center that left.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Keep the text coming, John.
There's always, you know, somebody leaves and then somebody fills in, and something amazing happens.
I'm sorry, because I forgot about it, but one of my greatest joys since leaving KIX was when Bill and I, who, as you know, is just an amazing writer and guitar player and singer, when we got to play together on the same stage with the North Carolina Singers.
There was this incredible crowd at Walnut Creek.
Amazing.
It was packed, and John said, "Come on up." And you were the one that kind of got me going again with my music, and we've had such a good time. But thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this tonight, and I love you all, and it's Joe Goodpasture, a legend. I mean, I look around this room, Tommy Walker back there, Mike Mitchell, my gosh, Jack Kane, one of the great voices, Gary Eden, oh my gosh. I'm thrilled. Charlie Brown, he had me on his radio show the other day. It was just like, it was like 44 years ago. We're just doing it again. But, you know, you guys, John a dollar? Mr. Patterson. My gosh, what an incredible group of people here, and I thank you dearly for inviting me.
I did my first show on the air. I followed Bob Jones, and I was nervous. Boy, I was really nervous. And I opened the first mic, and as soon as I opened the mic to introduce the record, I hear in my headphones, "Oh, God, what have I turned it on? What button have I pressed?"
It was Thorne James is what it was.
So go to the spot set, and I come back and I start to introduce the next record, and I hear in my headset, "Oh." And it went on for about 5 minutes. Well, I didn't know it, but Max Powell and Russ Spooner were riding around in their KIX car listening to their new DJ. And Russ called me and said, "What's going on?" He said, "I don't know, man. I sounded horrible because I was so scared." I said, "There's this whistle going on in my head every time I open the mic." He said, "You got to find out what it is." And then I looked in the production room, and Bob Jones is laying on the floor of the production room. And the headsets were those Cleveite brush headsets. You remember those headsets we used to wear years ago? Well, they're microphonic. They both reproduce, but if you plug them in, you can speak into them. And he's on the floor going, "Oh." Thank you, Bob. That was a lot of fun. I want to ask Gary Edens to come up. I want him to say a few words.
The first two that I'm going to tell you about are the first two that I met. It was Bob Kelly, the original Bob Kelly, Bob DeBartleman, and Hugh Holder, the general manager of the station, or as I called him, the Silver Fox with a voice like God. Charlie Brown and I were doing Sunday afternoon at the mighty 1480 in Durham, WSSB, and it had a signal that was, I don't know, it would go out at least a half a mile from the transmitter. And we were doing Sunday afternoons. We didn't even know each other, but we learned that we both were Carolina students. He was a year ahead of me. He was like a sophomore and I was a freshman. This was about 1961 or so. But we all knew about the mighty 850 WKIX, and we all wanted to work there. So at any rate, I got up the courage one time to go over to KIX and talk to the program director, who at the time was Bob DeBartoleben, known as Bob Kelly. He was a really dapper guy, you know, he was always wearing a blue blazer, and he was just Mr. Proper and everything, and he did all the programming and hiring for Hugh Holder, the manager. So I BS'd him into saying, oh, I've been in radio since I was 15. You know, I started in Salisbury, North Carolina. And then, you know, I went to WSSB in Durham, but I'd love to move up to KIX. He said, well, we might have something. Go do me an audition. So I did this audition, and he said, okay, we've got something on Sunday afternoons. Can you work Sunday afternoons? Yes, absolutely. Starting this Sunday afternoon, 3 days from now. Yes, I'll be here. Be here at noon. You'll work from noon till 6. And oh, by the way, at 3 o'clock, you play a religious tape. But I didn't know the John Tesh story about cutting. So at any rate, he says, okay, you're hired. And he said, let me introduce you to our general manager, Hugh Holder. So he walked me into that little office that Mr. Holder had behind the glass door there. And he stood up, and he always would do his hair like that. He was just so proper. And so Bob DeBartoleben said, this is Gary Edens. He's going to be doing Sunday afternoons for us. And Mr. Holder stuck out his hand and said, I shall be listening assiduously. I went to Carolina and everything. I didn't do that well in English, but I didn't know what assiduously meant, but I later did. So Bob Kelly wanted me to be Bill Bailey. He said, because he had a jingle named Bill Bailey. I said, well, if it's all just the same, I'll just use my real name and not have a jingle. He said, okay, but most everybody else here has a jingle. Well, we know that because Jim McCrudden became the second Bob Kelly. He used the copyrighted name Bob Kelly. So at any rate, I one day asked Mr. Holder, I said, would it be possible for me to get a jingle with my name in it? And he said, well, it'd be possible. Well, you keep doing a good job and maybe we'll get you one. So eventually, got a jingle. It cost $125, but that was big. It's the Gary Edens Show. But I admired Hugh Holder. Remember, he was the guy who was a CBS radio announcer. He didn't know anything about Top 40. In fact, he didn't even like the music. But he was smart enough to know, you know, this is really the coming thing. And then to put it on AM and FM, that was monstrous. But I kind of like jingles, and so did Hugh Holder. So I said, you know, these jingles that they have on WABC in New York, you know, 77 WABC, we need that kind of stuff. He said, yeah, well, they're kind of expensive, aren't they? He said, yeah, but, you know, they can really make them good. He said, okay, you can get it. So I flew to Dallas. He paid me to go to Dallas, and we came up with all these jingles, and that became the WKIX logo, WKIX, Channel 85, and kept that for years. But I really admired Hugh Holder, and sorry he's at the great radio station in the sky. And Bob DeBartoleben. I kept in touch with him, and of course, you worked with him, but he went on to be a legend. A couple of other guys who passed on, I don't have long stories about them, but Frank Maruca hired a guy from Detroit to be a news guy. His name was J. Paul McGonigal. Oh. Well, Bob Jones, who was my boss at Southern when I was running KOI in Phoenix, said, Gary, we need a news director out there that, you know, knows our way of doing things. And we got a fella in there in Raleigh, Paul McGonigal. You ought to give him a listen, which meant I want you to hire him. So I did, and he was our news director for years. And so here we were, this sort of chicken rock station, and we won all these news awards thanks to J. Paul McGonigal. He dropped the J. We said, you know, can we just call you Paul? And a moving story about him was, he was the news director and department head, and every Wednesday we'd have a department head meeting, and I was the GM, and he wasn't at the meeting, and so it was about 10 after 9, and the meeting started at 9, and I had my secretary call him and said, "Where's Paul?" So at any rate, he never answered. Eventually he called about 9:30. He said, "I got to speak to Gary." "Well, I'm sorry, he's in the department head meeting, the one you're supposed to be in. I can't come, but I need to talk to him." So I got on, I said, "Excuse me." So I talked to him and he said, "Gary, could you come to my house? I really need your help." And I said, "Sure, I'll be right there." So I went out to his house and he said, "I'm a hopeless drunk and I want you to take me to St. Luke's Rehabilitation Center. I need to go in. I'm a hopeless alcoholic." So I did. I took him there, and so he was there for 4 weeks, the same place Dick Van Dyke went, and he was cured. He never drank again in the rest of his life, and he also sponsored a lot of people in AA, so that's my memory of J. Paul McGonigal. He later died of cancer, but he didn't take any drinks. And then the other guy that I have very fond memories of, and he didn't die that long ago, 2 or 3 years ago, and he was a newsman, Raymond Calder.
Yes.
He was the snappiest dresser. Oh my gosh. He spent all of his money on Gucci loafers and all these fancy clothes, and he was good looking, and he was just smooth. And he kept in touch with us, and he was a member of Walter's WKIX Alum group, and he would write funny stuff, but he passed away about, I don't know, 2 years ago, but I talked to him for about an hour one day, and he just was a great guy. So those are some of the WKIX alums who passed on that I remember very fondly.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. Such an honor to be with you.
A couple things. First of all, we are here tonight because Sam. Joanne Margulies, made the arrangements for this dinner here tonight. She made all the negotiations for the deal. She made the reservations for us all at the Hyatt House, and we just want to thank her. Sam, we really appreciate it. Sam married Al Smith, who was another one of our alumni, most famous for the Ken Cooper Don't Care commercials.
And the Wake Art.
And Wake Art, yes. And tomorrow, they had a daughter, Alicia, and she's going to be coming tomorrow to breakfast. So some of you might remember Al, might want to introduce yourself to Alicia. I also, on a personal note, want to thank Tommy Walker, because Tommy and I were roommates, and he, I guess it was wife number 2. And he and wife number 2, he went to Winston to work, and Tommy and I were living together, and I was dating Sue.
Secretly.
Sue Taylor at the time.
Secretly.
Well, yeah, kind of. Clickin didn't like that. Clickin didn't like a lot of things. And a lot of us didn't like Clickin, so it was kind of even. But what was, I was so romantic, I said to Sue, "Well, Tommy's leaving. You've been here a lot anyway. Well, you might as well move in and we might as well get married." And yeah, next month we'll be celebrating our 45th wedding anniversary. Topped by Gary and Sue Ellen, who will have been married or have been. You're coming up on 51?
52.
52. Done, already been 51. So. And then the last thing I want to say, I don't want to repeat everything that everybody said, but it feels the same way about me, but if you have a car radio, I know most of you listen to radio on the phone now and other stuff, but tonight, right now, this very minute, on 680 WPTF, you could hear, right this minute probably, Bob Jones is saying, direct from the Beach Music Hall of Fame, here's Charlie Brown. And then a little bit later in the show, Gary Edens will say, "On the Beach with Charlie Brown" continues after this message. And then you'll hear Jack Kane's voice on my syndicated radio show. And it's really special to me to be able to spend tonight with those three guys who helped me get the syndicated show started, helped me get it set up in my house, and provided such great talent to be on my show. Thank you, everybody. Look forward to seeing you back at the hotel. Thank you, Sam.
You know, when Eddie and I started talking about, hey, it's time to do another reunion, we started talking 4 or 5 months ago. I think actually Bob Kelly sent a note to Eddie and said it's time to do another reunion, and then Eddie called, and you know, we just kind of imagined it, and here we are. Thanks for coming. I want to thank Ken Lowe and Rick Dees. I was hoping that we could get John Tesh to come, and I knew that if we could get Bill Leslie to come and Scott White, then maybe John Tesh would come. I didn't know that it was as important to you as it turned out to be, and I'm so glad you came. The people that came from out of town spent their money. They've spent a lot of money to help put this reunion together. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thanks a lot.